Imagine this, you sit down at your desk, you tell yourself, today, I'll finally get things done. You open your laptop, take a deep breath, and begin. 3 minutes later, your phone lights up, just one notification. You check it. It takes 5 seconds, then another notification appears. A message. An email. A YouTube recommendation. An Instagram reel. Without realizing it, you open another tab, then another. You tell yourself, I'll get back to work in a minute. 45 minutes disappear, and somehow, you've accomplished almost nothing. Sound familiar? If it does, you're not alone. Every single day, millions of people wake up determined to be productive, yet they end the day exhausted, not because they worked too hard, but because their attention was stolen, one distraction at a time. And here's the frightening part, this isn't happening by accident. The world's biggest companies are competing for something more valuable than your money. They're competing for your attention. Every notification, every endless scroll, every autoplay video, every algorithm has been carefully designed with one goal. To keep you looking just a little longer, because the longer they keep your attention, the more they profit, which means every minute you spend distracted, someone else is getting richer. Think about that. The most valuable resource you own isn't your time. It's your ability to focus, because time without focus produces very little. 1 hour of complete concentration can achieve more than an entire day filled with interruptions. Yet deep focus is becoming one of the rarest skills in the modern world, not because people have become lazy, but because distraction has become an industry. An industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars. And while most people are losing the battle without even realizing it, a small group of individuals has learned to protect something incredibly valuable: their attention, their ability to think deeply, their ability to create work that others simply cannot. This ability has a name: deep work. And in a world where everyone is distracted, it may become the greatest competitive advantage you can ever develop. Tonight, we're not just talking about productivity. We're exploring why your brain struggles to focus, who benefits from your distraction, and how mastering one forgotten skill can completely change your career, your creativity, and ultimately, your life. Act I. The world is designed to distract you. There was a time when silence was normal. People could sit for hours, reading a book, thinking deeply, working without interruption. There were no notifications. No endless feeds. No algorithms competing for every second of attention. If someone wanted to interrupt you, they had to be physically present. Today, everything has changed. The average person reaches for their phone dozens, sometimes hundreds, of times each day, not because they have to, but because they've been conditioned to. Think about your morning before your feet even touch the floor. Many people have already checked their phone, emails, messages, news, social media. Their brain hasn't had a single moment to think for itself. The outside world speaks first, and that pattern continues all day. A notification interrupts your work. A message interrupts your thoughts. A video interrupts your concentration. Little by little, your mind becomes accustomed to interruption, and something dangerous begins to happen. You lose the ability to stay with one difficult idea. At first, you don't notice it. You can still answer emails, scroll through social media, attend meetings, switch between 10 different tasks. It feels like productivity, but it isn't. It's activity. There's a difference. Being busy is not the same as creating something valuable. Imagine trying to read a novel, but someone closes the book every 2 minutes. Eventually, you stop caring about the story. Your brain never has the chance to go deep. Now replace the novel with your own thoughts. Every interruption forces your attention to start over. Every distraction leaves a small part of your mind behind, and when this happens dozens of times a day, deep thinking becomes almost impossible. The tragedy is that we've started accepting this as normal. We've confused constant connectivity with effectiveness. We've mistaken rapid responses for meaningful progress, but history tells a different story. The world's greatest scientists, writers, inventors, and entrepreneurs didn't create their best work while checking notifications every 5 minutes. Their breakthroughs came during long periods of uninterrupted concentration, because the greatest ideas don't appear instantly. They need time, they need silence, they need space. Deep work isn't just about working harder. It's about protecting your mind from a world that profits every time your attention is divided. And perhaps that's the biggest irony of all. The modern world offers us more information than ever before, yet leaves us with less time to truly think about any of it. The question isn't whether distractions exist. They always will. The real question is, who controls your attention, you or everyone else? Because the answer to that question may determine the quality of your future. Act 2. The death of deep thinking. Imagine walking into a library. Thousands of books surround you. The room is silent, peaceful. Your mind begins to slow down. Now imagine walking into a shopping mall. Bright lights, music, advertisements, people talking, screens flashing from every direction. Both places are filled with information, but only one allows you to think. Your brain was never designed to process constant stimulation. For thousands of years, human attention evolved in a world where silence was common. Distractions were rare. When you focused on something, you stayed with it. Today, Your brain is forced to switch tasks hundreds of times every day: email, message, notification, video, meeting, another notification, another email, another distraction. Each interruption seems harmless, just a few seconds, but together, they slowly reshape the way your brain works. Scientists call this attention residue. When you leave one task before your mind has finished processing it, a part of your attention stays behind even after you've moved on. That means you're never fully present. You're physically working on one thing, while mentally thinking about another. Now imagine repeating this 50, 100, or even 200 times every single day. Your brain never reaches its deepest level of concentration. It stays on the surface, always reacting, never creating. This is why many people feel mentally exhausted, even after a day spent sitting in front of a computer. It isn't physical work that's draining them. It's constant context switching. Every switch has a cost, not measured in money, but in mental energy. The frightening part is that we've become addicted to this cycle. Silence now feels uncomfortable. Waiting in line, we reach for our phones. Sitting alone, we open social media. 5 free minutes, we fill them with endless scrolling. We've trained ourselves to fear boredom. Act 3. The most valuable skill in the modern economy. Imagine two people, both graduate from the same university, both have similar intelligence, both start their careers on the same day. 10 years later, one has become almost impossible to replace, the other is still competing with thousands of people for the same opportunities. What changed? It wasn't talent. It wasn't luck. It wasn't even experience. It was the type of work they learned to do. For most of history, physical labor created value. The harder you worked, the more you produced. Then the world changed. Machines took over physical work. Today, knowledge has become the world's most valuable currency. But here's the problem: not all knowledge work creates the same value. Answering emails, updating spreadsheets, attending meetings, responding to messages, these things feel productive because they keep us busy. But busy doesn't always mean valuable. Imagine a sculptor. He spends months shaping a single masterpiece. Now imagine someone interrupting him every 5 minutes. A phone call, a message, another question, then another interruption. Would the sculpture ever become extraordinary? Probably not, because great work demands uninterrupted attention. The same is true for programmers, writers, designers, scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs. The work that changes careers rarely happens in 5-minute intervals. It happens during long periods of uninterrupted concentration. This is what separates shallow work from deep work. Shallow work is easy to copy, easy to automate, easy to replace. Deep work is different. It creates ideas. It solves difficult problems. It builds skills that take years to master, and those skills become incredibly valuable. Think about the people you admire most: the author who writes books that influence millions, the entrepreneur who builds companies from nothing, the musician who creates timeless songs, the scientist who changes an entire industry. From the outside, it looks like talent. But behind every extraordinary achievement, there are thousands of hours that nobody ever sees. Hours spent thinking, practicing, failing, trying again, not distracted, not multitasking, just focused, deeply focused. The modern economy rewards this kind of work more than ever before, because while everyone else is reacting, the people who can think deeply are creating. While others consume content, they produce ideas. While others chase notifications, they build things that outlast them, and that's becoming increasingly rare. Artificial intelligence can answer questions, algorithms can organize information, software can automate repetitive tasks, but none of them can replace a mind that has learned to think deeply, connect ideas, and create something truly original. Perhaps that's why focus has become more than a productivity skill. It's becoming an economic advantage. The ability to sit with one difficult problem, long after everyone else has given up, may become one of the highest paid skills of the next decade, because in a distracted world, the person who can concentrate will always have an unfair advantage, not because they work more, but because every hour they spend working actually matters. Act 4. The superpower nobody is building. Imagine waking up tomorrow with the ability to focus completely. 4 uninterrupted hours. No urge to check your phone. No desire to open another tab. No constant battle inside your mind, just pure concentration. How much could you accomplish? 1 week, 1 month, 1 year? The answer is probably far more than you can imagine, because focus works like a multiplier. It doesn't simply help you finish tasks. It changes the quality of everything you create. A programmer writes cleaner code. A writer produces better ideas. A designer notices details others miss. An entrepreneur solves problems competitors can't even see. Deep work doesn't just make you faster. It makes you better, and that's exactly why it's becoming so rare. Most people spend their days reacting. They react to emails, they react to notifications, they react to meetings. Their schedule belongs to everyone, except themselves. But the people who produce extraordinary work live differently. Instead of reacting, they create. They don't protect their time, they protect their attention, because they understand something most people never realize. Attention is finite. Every yes you give to distraction is a no to something meaningful. Imagine trying to fill a glass with water, while someone keeps punching holes in the bottom. No matter how much water you pour, the glass never fills. That's exactly what happens when you try to do deep work. while allowing constant interruptions, your attention leaks away. One notification at a time. The world's greatest creators understood this long before smartphones existed. They built routines around concentration. Some disappeared into cabins, others locked themselves in quiet offices. Some wrote early in the morning, before the rest of the world woke up, not because they hated people, but because they respected their own mind. They knew that creativity isn't found in chaos. It's found in uninterrupted silence. Here's the surprising part. Deep work isn't a talent. It isn't something you're born with. It's a skill, and like every skill, it can be trained. At first, your mind will resist. 5 minutes will feel difficult, then 10. Then 20. Because you've spent years teaching your brain to expect constant stimulation. Now, you're asking it to do the opposite. And every great skill begins that way, uncomfortable, slow, frustrating. But something remarkable happens if you persist. Your concentration grows stronger, distractions lose their power, thinking becomes clearer, difficult problems become easier to solve. You begin entering a state psychologists call flow. A state where time disappears, where your mind operates at its highest level, where your best ideas are born. This is the hidden advantage of deep work. It doesn't just improve your productivity. It transforms the way you experience work itself. The things that once felt impossible become deeply satisfying, and perhaps that's the greatest irony. The modern world teaches us to chase speed, but the people who create the most valuable work slow down. They disconnect, they focus, and by doing less, they accomplish far more, because in the end, success doesn't belong to the busiest person. It belongs to the one who can give their full attention to what matters most. Act V. Train your brain to do the impossible. Imagine giving someone who has never exercised a marathon to run tomorrow. They wouldn't fail because they're weak, they would fail because they never trained. Now ask yourself another question. When was the last time you trained your ability to focus? Not your body, not your memory, not your knowledge, your attention. For most people, the answer is never. We spend years exercising our muscles, years learning new skills, yet we expect our brain to concentrate for hours, without ever practicing. Concentration itself. Deep work begins with a simple realization. Focus is not a personality trait. It's a muscle, and every muscle follows the same rule. Use it, and it grows stronger. Ignore it, and it slowly weakens. This is why sitting down to work often feels uncomfortable. Your mind isn't broken. It's simply out of shape. Years of constant notifications, instant entertainment, and endless scrolling have trained your brain to expect novelty every few seconds. The moment work becomes difficult, your brain looks for an escape. A message, a headline, a quick video, anything that delivers an instant reward. The problem isn't technology. The problem is that we've stopped teaching our minds how to be alone with a difficult thought. Cal Newport proposes something that sounds almost strange today. Practice boredom. At first, it feels impossible. Standing in a line without checking your phone, walking without headphones, waiting without opening an app, doing absolutely nothing. These tiny moments seem meaningless, but they're quietly rebuilding something you've been losing for years. Your ability to resist distraction. Think about an Olympic athlete. The competition lasts minutes, the training lasts years. Deep work follows the same principle. The hours you spend protecting your attention prepare you for the moments that truly matter. Another mistake many people make is believing they need unlimited hours to produce meaningful work. They don't, they need uninterrupted hours. There's a huge difference. 2 hours of complete concentration can outperform 8 hours of fragmented attention. That's why many of history's greatest thinkers didn't work endlessly, they worked intensely, then they stopped, because the brain has limits. Deep work is not about squeezing more hours into your day. It's about making every hour count. One of the most powerful ways to do this is through ritual. When you always work in the same place, at the same time, without distractions, your brain begins recognizing a pattern. Eventually, you don't force yourself to focus. Focus becomes automatic. The environment tells your mind, it's time. This is why some writers always use the same desk, why some entrepreneurs begin every morning the same way, why artists disappear into quiet studios. They're not waiting for motivation. They're creating conditions where focus naturally appears. Because motivation comes and goes, systems remain. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all is that deep work isn't just changing the way you work. It's changing the way you think. Every uninterrupted session teaches your brain patience. Every difficult problem you refuse to escape makes your mind stronger. Every distraction you resist becomes another vote for the person you're becoming. Little by little, your attention returns, your thoughts become clearer, your ideas become deeper, and something extraordinary begins to happen. The work that once felt impossible starts feeling natural, not because the work became easier, but because you became stronger. Act 6. The future belongs to those who can focus. Imagine two versions of yourself. Both wake up tomorrow morning. Both have the same 24 hours, the same opportunities, the same internet, the same technology, the same resources. At first, their lives look identical, but one small decision changes everything. The first person begins the day by reaching for their phone. 1 notification becomes 5.5 become 20. An hour disappears before the day has even started. Throughout the day, the pattern repeats. A message interrupts a task. An email interrupts a thought. A video interrupts an idea. By nightfall, they're exhausted, busy, but strangely, nothing meaningful was created. Now imagine the second person, before touching a phone, they sit down to do the hardest work of the day. No notifications, no social media, no distractions, just complete focus for 90 minutes. The outside world disappears. One difficult problem gets solved. Point 1 chapter gets written. Point 1 skill improves. Point 1 project moves forward. Then they continue with the rest of their day. Tomorrow, they repeat the process again and again for a week. The difference is invisible. For a month, still difficult to notice, but after 1 year, they're living completely different lives. Point 1 has spent hundreds of hours consuming. The other has spent hundreds of hours creating. Point 1 has trained their brain to react. The other has trained their brain to think. This is the power of compounding. Not only in money, but in attention. Every focused hour becomes an investment. An investment in your knowledge, your career, your creativity, your future. The world often celebrates talent, but it quietly rewards consistency. Most extraordinary careers aren't built in dramatic moments. They're built during ordinary mornings, when nobody is watching, when someone chooses to focus. Instead of scrolling. To create. Instead of consume. To think. Instead of react. Perhaps that's why deep work feels so difficult, because you're fighting against habits that the modern world reinforces every single day. But remember this, everything valuable has become scarce: peace, silence, patience, and above all, undivided attention. The people who protect these things will become the people who shape the future, not because they know more, but because they can stay with one important idea long enough to transform it into something meaningful. Years from now, artificial intelligence will become more powerful, technology will become faster, information will become limitless, but one thing will become even more valuable: a human being, capable of thinking deeply, without distraction. That person will solve harder problems, build better businesses, create better art, write better books, lead better teams, and live with a level of clarity that most people will never experience. Because in a world designed to steal your attention, protecting your focus is no longer just a productivity strategy. It's an act of freedom, and perhaps the greatest competitive advantage of the 21st century. Final act. The choice that will define your future. Imagine it's 10 years from today. You wake up, walk to your desk, open your laptop, and look back at the person you used to be, the version of you who was constantly distracted, who couldn't finish what they started, who confused being busy with making progress. Would you even recognize that person anymore? Probably not, because transformation rarely happens in one dramatic moment. It happens quietly. Point 1 focused hour at a time. When people talk about success, they often imagine breakthrough moments: the business that suddenly explodes, the book that becomes a bestseller, the invention that changes an industry. But they rarely see what came before: the lonely mornings, the empty notebooks, the failed ideas, the thousands of hours spent working when nobody was watching. Every masterpiece begins the same way, with one person sitting alone, choosing to concentrate. That's the part history forgets. We celebrate outcomes. We ignore attention, yet attention is where everything begins. Every company, every scientific discovery, every novel, every work of art, every life-changing idea started as a single thought, protected long enough to become reality. The tragedy is that most people never give their best ideas that chance, not because they aren't intelligent, not because they lack talent, but because they never stay with one thought long enough for it to grow. Distraction kills possibilities before they ever have the chance to exist, and every day, the world gives you two choices. You can spend your attention building someone else's platform, or building your own future. Point 1 click at a time. Point 1 notification at a time. Point 1 hour at a time. The choice seems small, until years pass, then it becomes your life. This is why deep work is about more than productivity. It's about ownership, owning your attention, owning your time, owning your future. Because if someone else controls what you pay attention to, they slowly begin controlling the direction of your life. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson of all: your attention is your life. Whatever receives it grows. If you give it to distractions, distraction grows. If you give it to fear, fear grows. If you give it to learning, knowledge grows. If you give it to meaningful work, your future grows. No one can make that decision for you. Not technology, not your employer, not your family, not this video, only you. Years from now, the world won't remember how many notifications you answered, how many emails you replied to, or how many hours you spent scrolling, but it will remember what you created, the problems you solved, the people you inspired, the ideas you brought into existence, and all of those things begin with one simple decision. To protect the most valuable asset you'll ever own, your attention, because in a world where everyone is distracted, the people who learn to focus won't just have better careers. They'll build better lives. So the next time you sit down to work, ask yourself one question: am I consuming the world, or am I creating something the world will remember? Because your future isn't built by the hours you spend online. It's built by the moments when you choose to think deeply, and perhaps that single choice will change everything.